Hey guys, welcome back to the Laux family farm. Today we are starting seeds. It's the end of February, which means here in Northwest Indiana, we are nearly 8 weeks out from our last average frost date, and that is the perfect time to start peppers and tomatoes. I have some new and interesting varieties this year. It is my first time ordering online at Baker Creek, Pine Tree Farm, a bunch of different and exciting seed companies that have more rare seed variety. The first thing I did before I sat down here today to start some of these seeds is I went through all the varieties of the seeds I have, which is quite a bit. I actually sat down with a Google document and I listed them all out and put in the information that I found on the back of the seed packet of when these seed companies suggested that I start the seeds. The information that's on the back of the seed packets really is so valuable. These companies do research to really see when it is best and how it is best to grow these produce. Now, another thing that's different this year is the growing medium I will be using to start my seedlings. Before, I've always just bought the seed starting mix from whatever the feed store is offering me, which is really heavy in peat moss, and I've learned since then that that is not a sustainable source of starting your seeds. Peat moss is actually really not a good medium to be using. So this year I am trying the coconut coir, and I really hope it will be successful because it is a much more ethical and sustainable medium to start my seeds in, and it just makes me feel a lot better. The cocoa coir was shipped to me as a dry brick. To prepare it for planting, I had to break it up with my hands while adding warm water. It should be a good alternative since it retains moisture just as well as peat moss. Now, I am going to be adding potting soil. I have Fox Farm, and this will actually have nutrients for my seedlings. In the years past, when I have just used seed starter mix, I did have to fertilize the seeds every week or so that they were getting the nutrients they need. But I've learned since then from other better gardeners than myself that if you add in some potting mix, then the seedlings will have more nutrients and you won't have to fertilize or up pot them as quickly. So we're gonna give that a try and mix the two together so it'll still be a very light, fluffy medium for my seedlings to grow in. So I'm just going to be adding the potting soil in. Now what I do like to do is go ahead and add some water directly to the soil. That way, once the seeds are placed, I can just give it a light mist on top, and I don't have to actually water them in, because what will happen is some of these seeds are so small that when you go to water, it'll actually kind of displace where you've put the seed, which can kind of affect the chances of it being successful. All right, so this should be a good texture. So this should be a good amount, not too wet. All right, what I'm using today, I will be sure to link down in the description box below so that you can see what products they are. These are just 10 by 20 trays that I bought off of Amazon, and then I also got a bunch of these 6-packs. I don't prefer yet to start in anything smaller than this just because I don't have the time to keep up potting them as they grow, and so especially for these seeds that, again, it's going to be 8 weeks until I'm able to transplant these out into my actual garden. I do like starting with a bigger size. And I find though that some of these I still will be up potting, it's just not as soon and as quickly. So it seems to work out well for me. So like I said, I have these trays that I just put on top. These trays do not have drainage holes, but these do. So what I do once they're filled up is I fill the bottom of this with water so that they can be bottom watered, where I just put the water on the bottom. The roots that are growing will suck up the water from the underneath, and it's so much healthier for your plant to do it that way. It avoids a lot of diseases and issues of getting the leaves wet on your seedlings. I'm going to fill this up almost all the way. So I'm going to try to make sure that I get almost all the air pockets out, but not pack it too densely. For the seeds to germinate, you do want the soil to be light, airy, but also not too packed so that the roots are able to grow. So I am going to do the Paul Robeson tomato that is from Baker Creek. I'll be doing that first. It says to plant the seed an 1/8 inch deep. It'll sprout in 7 to 14 days. So what I do first is I always poke a little bit of a hole in each cell. And then I take my seeds and I try to put 2 to 3 seeds into each hole. That way, I can ensure that there will be a successful seed in each cell that will germinate. And if all 3 seeds are successful and I have 3 little plants, I can go ahead and thin them out so that they're not competing for space. Okay, and then once they're in, I go ahead and I take the soil and I just lightly cover them back up, not too much. Again, it said on the seed packet to only sow them about 1/8 of an inch under, so not very much at all. Okay, and then I have my first ones. I'll then take my trusty Sharpie and a label, and I will label the cell. Then next, again, fill the seed tray up. Because I am using potting soil, there are a couple larger sticks that you do come across, and you do want to make sure that you just go ahead and put them to the side and not to have them in your Alright, and then I will be trying the pink fang tomato. Again, it says 1/8 of an inch deep. And then covering them gently back up, just lightly. And I'll make sure that I label these. Pink fang tomato. Baker's Creek has so many fun, rare varieties. It's nearly impossible to choose what kind of tomatoes you want to grow, especially if you're like me and you just love growing a rainbow and there's so unique varieties. I could just stay on that website for hours. It's not good for the budget. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish my other tomato varieties, and then I will be moving on to my flowers. So I try to keep, like, this whole tray will be tomatoes or peppers, something that's in the same family. And then on another tray, I'd be starting all flowers. That way it just kind of helps me, especially because they're all going into similar areas of the garden. It's just a little helpful hint that I try to do. So the first flower variety I'm going to be planting today is from Pine Tree Garden Seeds, and it is the Double Extreme Dahlia. Now, I never have started dahlias from seeds. I've bought tubers in the past. This is the first year I'm going to be really trying to grow a really good cut flower garden. So I never in the past actually dug up my tubers. I've always really been into landscaping and using specifically perennials that are just more easy, low maintenance, that they'll just come back every year. And so I never really took the time to learn about more annual flowers, but last year I really just loved growing my own annual flowers. I started out with just a couple zinnias and cosmos, and I guess those are truly the gateway cut flower garden. I enjoyed it so much that this year I really just want to see how successful I can be. Hint I recently learned last year is that you can kind of determine how far you plant the seed by the size. If it's a little bit bigger of a seed, you're going to want to go a little bit deeper. Now, if it is a tiny seed like poppies, where they're so tiny, you want to almost just put them gently on the top and barely even bury them. But these got a pretty good size to them. I made my hole, and again, I always like to play it on the safe side, putting 2 to 3, maybe even 4. Since I've never done this before, I have no idea what kind of germination I'm gonna get. So I'd rather plant a little bit heavy and go ahead and just thin out later on, which thinning out means that you're going back and removing the smallest or weakest looking seedling so that the strongest and healthiest one has enough space to grow and be successful. Okay, gently cover them back up. Here. The next dahlia is from Pine Tree Garden Seeds as well, and it is called the Showpiece. It's a mixture of different showpiece dahlias. Starting dahlias from seed is also a very cost-effective way to grow dahlias. I'm hoping that they do well and they'll develop the tubers, and then come this fall, I'll dig up the tubers and be able to store them and plant them for next year. So that'll be kind of cool to have my seeds that I bought this season be able to carry out through seasons to come. All right, just poking my hose again. Opening the seed packet. I'd assume these seeds look just like the other one, but we'll see. Yep, little bit larger, so my holes were a little bit deeper. And what I did not do, that I need to go ahead and do, is make sure I label them so I don't get them mixed up. So that was the double extreme that I just did earlier. Make sure I label that, that would not be good. And then get another label for the showpiece. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of the tray with flowers. I just finished planting all the seed varieties that we're doing today. Now it's time to move them out into the greenhouse, which we have in our garage. I carried all 3 trays of the seedlings out into the greenhouse that we have in our garage, and I inserted the heating probes that will monitor the temperature to make sure that they are between 65 and 85 degrees, so it will be perfect temperature for germination. Here you can see that it's just a little metal probe that goes into the dirt, and it is connected. And here is where we can monitor the temperature. Before I go ahead and zip this greenhouse back up, I do need to add water to the bottom of these trays to make sure that the cells stay moist. And I also need to add plastic wrap to the top to create a more humid environment so that the seeds can germinate. The more humidity, the better for seedlings germination. Now you can use plastic domes that are basically like a clear plastic lid that fit right on top. I find that plastic wrap works just as well, and it's more cost effective in this case, and I'm all about a good budget. And then what I also do though, before I put the plastic wrap on, is I make sure that I get a spray bottle and I just spray the top. The best way I find to add water is to just quickly take out one of the cells, grab your watering can, and just fill the bottom. Wrap is on, and I can already see that it's trapping in quite a bit of humidity. So before I zip this up, I will be putting this monitor in here. It tracks the temperature and the humidity. I'll put it right there. And then I'll zip her up. And I do not need to have the grow lights on. None of these seeds need light to germinate. I had it on just so that I could see what I was doing. Once I do notice little green sprouts started, I'll take the plastic wrap off and I will turn the grow lights on so that they can have all the things they need to be successful little seedlings and grow big and strong plants for a great harvest this year. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye.